My name is Elizabeth, and what I'm about to tell you is the darkest chapter of my life. For 5 years, I was married to Ryan. From the outside, it looked like a perfect love story, filled with laughter, long talks into night, and a bond one thought nothing could ever break. But behind all that joy, there was a quiet emptiness, something I couldn't define, pulling me toward a decision that would change everything. It happened one November evening, during what should have been another ordinary get-together at Jake's place. Ryan, his best friends Jake and Michael, and I were all there. Those three had been inseparable long before I ever came into the picture, but over time, they became like family to me too. Ryan and I had built our life side by side from the very beginning. We first crossed paths in college, over textbooks and coffee, and from then on, I never doubted he was a man I'd spend forever with. At 32, he worked as a software engineer, steady, reliable, with a dry wit that caught people off guard, and a devotion to sports that made Sundays untouchable. He was my anchor, even if words didn't always come easily for him. Jake, at 31, was the opposite, outgoing, magnetic tall, with rugged beard and a laugh that filled the whole room. A contractor by trade, he always had wild stories to tell, and his home mirrored his personality, messy but full of energy. Michael, the youngest at 29, was Jake's balance. Thoughtful, sharp-minded, a designer often lost in his own imagination. When Michael spoke, everyone listened. Together, the four of us shared years of memories, cookouts, beach trips full of laughter, late-night games, and the occasional argument. They weren't just Ryan's friends anymore. They were mine too. But that night, something shifted. I still remember stepping into Jake's living room, brownies in hand, the air already heavy with the smell of beer and nachos. The football game roared from the TV, voices shouting, laughter bouncing off the walls. Ryan looked more alive than I'd seen him in weeks, grinning wide, high-fiving Jake after every good play. I should have felt only happiness, but instead, there was a hollow ache inside me. Hours passed, the drinking picked up, and the energy grew rowdier. Eventually, Ryan slumped into the couch, half asleep, lulled by exhaustion and alcohol. I slipped into the kitchen, craving a moment of stillness, of air. That's when Jake followed. His presence filled the room before I even turned around. His voice was low, stripped of its usual humor. "You look like you need a break," he said. Then he was closer, too close. His hands found my waist, his breath hot against my skin. Every part of me screamed to pull away, but I didn't. My body betrayed me, leaning towards something I knew was wrong. Then Michael appeared in the doorway. For a moment, I thought he would stop it, call it out, save me from myself. Instead, he stepped forward, his voice calm, deliberate. "We've all been holding back for too long." His touch was lighter than Jake's, just a brush against my arm, but it carried the same danger. The three of us stood there in the kitchen, caught in something reckless, something I never imagined I'd let happen. When it was over, silence fell heavy. Jake grabbed another beer like nothing had happened. Michael muttered that he needed air and slipped outside into the night. I stayed behind, gripping the counter, trembling, disgusted with myself, yet shaken by the rush I couldn't ignore. Guilt crashed over me instantly. Ryan was only a few feet away, sleeping peacefully, the man who had stood by me through everything. My husband, who deserved more than betrayal. And yet, I couldn't erase the spark I felt in those forbidden moments, a cruel reminder of how hollow I'd been inside. When I returned to the living room, I sat far from Ryan, afraid even to meet his eyes. Jake tried to crack a joke, but it fell flat. Michael came back in quiet, distant, and the air between us grew suffocating. I woke Ryan gently, praying he wouldn't see the guilt written across my face. His tired eyes searched mine, and for a heartbeat, I thought he knew. We left soon after, but the damage was already done. The November cold bit into my skin as we stepped outside, but inside, I burned with shame. The days that followed blurred together, each one heavier than the last. I couldn't look at Ryan without feeling crushed by what I'd done. Every smile, every touch became a reminder of the secret I carried. I buried myself in routine, brewing coffee, folding laundry, going through the motions of marriage I had already fractured. But no matter how hard I tried, my mind returned again and again to that night in Jake's kitchen. The heat of forbidden hands. The moment I crossed a line I could never uncross. As weeks passed, the weight only grew heavier. Each morning at breakfast, I'd sit across from Ryan, my coffee untouched, struggling to meet his gaze. He'd pass me the sugar or press a kiss to the top of my head before leaving for work, and each small act shredded me further. I threw myself into chores, folded his shirts with mechanical precision, scrubbing dishes until my hands ached. Anything to keep my thoughts occupied. But no matter how hard I worked, memories of Jake's grip and Michael's eyes clung to me like shadows. At night, lying in bed beside Ryan, I'd listen to his steady breathing, feel his warmth, and the shame would cut so sharply I had to bite my lip to keep from sobbing. The silence with Jake and Michael was its own punishment. Jake barely looked at me, and when he did, it was with a forced casualness that rang hollow. Michael avoided me completely, offering only quick nods or clipped words. The bond we had all shared was broken, poisoned, and I lived in fear that Ryan would notice. And he did notice. Not the truth, not yet, but the cracks. One evening, he came home later than usual, his tie loose around his neck. I was setting the table when he stopped in the doorway, just watching me. "You okay?" he asked softly, brow furrowed. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired," I said, my voice unsteady. His eyes lingered on me, like he wanted to push further, but he let it go. That moment terrified me, because if he ever chose to press, to peel back the layers I'd built around myself, I wasn't sure I could keep it all in. Days stretched into weeks, and I found myself living in two worlds. Outwardly, I was still Ryan's wife, the partner who laughed at his dry jokes, who made dinner, who sat beside him for Sunday games. But inside, I was unraveling. The guilt gnawed at me relentlessly. And yet, beneath it all, there was another truth I couldn't deny. Part of me had felt alive in that kitchen, more alive than I had in years. And that realization frightened me even more than the guilt itself. The distance between Ryan and me widened slowly, almost too subtly to notice at first. A missed kiss in the morning, a shorter hug at night, conversations that skimmed the surface instead of diving deep like before. I told myself I was protecting him, protecting us, by burying the truth. But with each passing day, the lie pressed heavier, threatening to crush everything we had built together. One night, unable to sleep, I wandered into the kitchen. The house was quiet, the clock ticking like a drumbeat. I stood there staring at the counter, the same spot where I had betrayed Ryan, and the image of his face flashed through my mind.